Jack had been riding all afternoon under the scorching sun. The ranch work was endless, and the dusty trail seemed to stretch farther than usual. His horse, Dusty, moved steadily, unbothered by the long hours. Jack was a cowboy through and through. Not just by trade but by heart. The wide-open plains, the smell of hay and leather, the rhythm of horses' hooves, it was his life. And yet, today, something felt different. The air carried a strange stillness, as if the town ahead was holding its breath. Jack's boots kicked up small clouds of dust as he approached the edge of the small town. It was a quiet place, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business but still pretended not to. Wooden buildings lined the main street, weathered and worn by years of wind and sun. The saloon's doors swung lazily with the breeze, and the church bell stood silent in its tower. Jack had passed through many times before, but today he felt drawn to something he couldn't yet understand. He slowed Dusty as he neared a small house at the far end of the street. It was an unassuming home, with chipped white paint and a little garden that struggled under the hot sun. A faint sound reached him before he could see anyone. Someone was talking, softly, almost like a whisper to themselves. Jack frowned and leaned slightly forward on Dusty. Curiosity pricked at him. It wasn't usual for anyone to be outside this late in the afternoon, and even less usual to hear voices coming from inside a home. Jack didn't mean to eavesdrop. He told himself that over and over. But then he heard words that stopped him cold. A young woman's voice, trembling but clear, said, "I don't want to die a virgin." Jack's stomach tightened. He had been around life enough to know when someone was speaking from a place of fear, loneliness, or sadness. Those words, they weren't just random, they carried weight, a deep, painful longing that reached beyond the walls of her house and into the quiet street. Jack's mind raced. Who was she? Why would anyone feel so alone in a town like this? He felt a sudden urge to knock on the door, to offer some kind of comfort, but another part of him, the cowboy part that had learned to respect boundaries, held him back. He knew that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was nothing. Just step back and let people face their fears on their own terms. Yet, as he stood there, Dusty shifting beneath him, he couldn't help but wonder about the story behind that voice. He looked around, hoping for a glimpse of her, but the windows were covered with thin curtains. All he could see were faint shadows moving inside. Jack thought about the irony of life on the ranch versus life in town. On the ranch, every action was visible and accountable. You worked hard, respected the animals, and you could see the results of your efforts in tangible ways. Town life, though, it had secrets, whispered wishes, and private moments that only walls and curtains could hold. And here he was, standing on the edge of both worlds, caught between curiosity and respect. Jack felt a strange connection to the woman, though he had never met her. He imagined her sitting in that small room, maybe looking out the window at the same sunset he had been watching. He pictured the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands might fidget nervously, the little sighs she might let out without realizing it. Her words had been so raw, so honest, that they had pierced the routine armor he usually wore. He was a cowboy who had faced storms, stampedes, and long nights alone, yet nothing had struck him quite like this one moment. For a while, Jack just sat there, listening to the faint sounds of movement inside the house. The world outside seemed to slow. The distant train whistle, the soft clatter of a dog barking, the rustle of leaves in the wind, all of it faded into the background. All that mattered was the voice he had heard, carrying a fear and longing that reminded him how fragile life could be, how important it was to listen, even if only in silence. After a few minutes, Jack realized he was holding his breath. Slowly, he exhaled and shook his head, trying to clear the swirl of thoughts. He knew he had two choices: knock and risk intruding on her private moment, or turn Dusty around and continue on his way, letting life unfold without interference. He felt the weight of both options pressing down on him. A cowboy's life often involved decisions made in an instant on the trail, in the corral, in the middle of a storm. But this was different. This was a decision that didn't involve strength or skill, only judgment and patience. Jack finally made his choice. He reached down, gently patting Dusty's neck, and whispered, "Not today, boy." He guided the horse a few steps back, and slowly closed the distance between himself and the street behind him. Then, in a motion that felt heavier than it should, he closed the door to his own curiosity, stepping back from the urge to intervene. He left her words hanging in the air, unspoken, her fears untouched. And yet, somehow, that brief encounter had left a mark on him, a small spark that he didn't yet understand but knew would stay with him. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, Jack rode away from the small house. Dusty moved with a steady, comforting rhythm, and Jack's mind wandered. He thought about the roads he had traveled, the people he had met, and the countless sunsets he had seen alone. But this moment, standing outside that small, quiet house, listening to a voice so honest and real, it would not be so easily forgotten. Jack realized something important. Life wasn't just about the physical journey across fields and plains. Sometimes, it was about the moments that touched your heart, that reminded you of your own humanity. He had spent so many years surviving, working, and moving forward, that he rarely paused to reflect on the quiet, hidden lives of others. Today, though, he had stopped. Today, he had felt. And in that feeling, in that recognition of someone else's fear and longing, Jack found a new kind of awareness. As he rode toward the horizon, Jack made a quiet promise to himself. He didn't know if he would ever meet the young woman again. He didn't even know her name, but he would carry this memory, this moment of raw honesty, as a reminder of the depth and complexity of the human heart. And maybe, someday, if fate allowed, their paths would cross again under different circumstances. Circumstances where words could be shared face to face, where understanding could turn into connection, and where the silence of that afternoon would become something more. For now, though, Jack let the small town fade behind him. The wind carried the scent of hay and dust, the sky burned with color, and the rhythm of Dusty's hooves kept him grounded in the present. He had heard a voice that would not leave him, a reminder that life could surprise you in the most unexpected ways. And for the first time in a long time, Jack felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, anticipation, curiosity, and the quiet hope that some encounters, even ones left unfinished, could change a life forever. The next morning, Jack woke before the sun, as he always did. The soft glow of dawn crept through the small window of the ranch cabin, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. The smell of coffee brewing and hay in the barn mixed in the cool morning air. Jack went about his routine, feeding the horses, checking fences, and ensuring everything on the ranch was in order. But even amidst the familiar rhythm of work, his mind wandered back to the small house at the edge of town. The young woman's words echoed in his head, lingering in a way he couldn't easily shake. Jack had always been practical, the kind of man who measured life in work and deeds. Feelings were often pushed aside, considered distractions in a life that demanded constant motion and responsibility. Yet, her words had pierced that armor. They carried a vulnerability so raw that Jack couldn't dismiss it with a simple shrug. He found himself thinking about her as he worked, imagining her sitting by the window, perhaps staring out at the empty street, wrestling with her own fears. He wondered what kind of life she led, what dreams she held close to her heart, and what had brought her to speak words so honest, so full of longing, aloud to no one but herself. By midday, Jack decided he would ride into town. He didn't have a specific plan, he only knew that he wanted to see her again, even from a distance. Dusty's hooves kicked up small clouds of dust as they approached the town, and Jack felt the familiar hum of anticipation. He reminded himself to stay calm, to respect the boundaries of a stranger. Yet the pull of curiosity was strong. As he passed the small house, he slowed his horse again. This time, the windows were bare, revealing more of the interior. Jack caught sight of movement, a shadow crossing the room, and he felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. She was there. She was real. But he also reminded himself that his presence was unknown, that any sudden action could startle her or make her uncomfortable. So he stayed in the shadows, allowing only a glimpse, his eyes soft and careful. Jack's thoughts drifted to the nature of courage. He had faced countless storms, wild animals, and dangerous rides. Yet he realized that confronting someone's heart was far more delicate than facing the dangers of the plains. It required patience, empathy, and respect. It was not about strength, but understanding. And in that moment, he understood the enormity of what he had overheard, the trust implicit in someone speaking such private fears aloud. Even when no one was listening. Later that afternoon, Jack found himself walking through the market square, trying to focus on ordinary tasks. He checked supplies at the general store, talked briefly with neighbors, and made casual conversation. Yet, even among the bustle of daily life, he couldn't escape thoughts of the young woman. Every laugh he heard, every face he passed, reminded him of the fragility of human connection. He realized that life was full of fleeting moments, small opportunities to reach out and touch someone's world, and that sometimes those opportunities came in the quietest, most unexpected ways. As the day wore on, Jack finally saw her again. She was walking along the street with a basket of laundry, her steps hesitant but determined. He noticed the way she moved, the careful balance of confidence and caution. There was a subtle sadness in her eyes, the same depth he had sensed from the words she had spoken the day before. Jack felt a sudden surge of protectiveness, a desire to make life a little easier for her. Even if he couldn't yet know the right way to do it, Jack approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "Good afternoon," he said softly, tipping his hat. She looked up, startled at first, then nodded politely. "Hello," she replied, her voice quiet but steady. There was a brief pause, a moment of hesitation that neither could ignore. Jack sensed that she had no idea he had overheard her the day before, and he wondered if it was better that way. Some moments, he realized, were meant to exist as gentle reminders of life's unpredictability, not as turning points that demanded immediate action. Over the next few minutes, they exchanged small talk about the weather, the crops, and the town. Jack noticed how careful she was with her words, choosing them as if each one mattered. He admired that restraint, understanding that it came from a place of strength rather than fear. Slowly, the tension between them eased. Jack spoke with the calm assurance of someone used to long days in the open, and she responded with a warmth that suggested curiosity, if not trust. By the time they parted, Jack felt that an invisible thread had been woven between them, subtle but undeniable. As he walked back to Dusty, Jack reflected on the nature of human connection. It was fragile, he realized, built not on grand gestures, but on small, consistent acts of attention and care. Sometimes, it was enough to simply be present, to offer a listening ear or a kind word. And though he had made no promises, though he had spoken no great declarations, he felt the stirrings of something rare and precious, a sense that his life might soon be touched in ways he could not yet imagine. That evening, Jack returned to the ranch with Dusty, the sun low in the sky, painting the plains in shades of gold and orange. He completed his evening chores in silence, the memories of the day playing in his mind like a gentle refrain. When the work was done, he sat on the porch, sipping coffee as the wind carried the distant sounds of town life. He thought about the young woman, about the courage it must have taken to voice her fears, and about the strange way life brought people together, in moments that seemed accidental but often held deeper meaning. Jack realized that the world was full of stories, untold struggles, quiet triumphs, and private fears. And sometimes, those stories intersected in unexpected ways, nudging people toward one another without fanfare or notice. He thought about the choices ahead, whether to pursue a connection with the young woman, whether to remain an observer, or whether to wait for fate to guide their paths. Each option held its own risks and rewards, yet Jack felt a calm determination settle over him. He would move forward carefully, respecting boundaries, listening with his heart as well as his ears, and letting the bond grow naturally. Days passed, and Jack found himself thinking more and more about her. He imagined the small moments they might share, a conversation over the fence, a helping hand with chores, the quiet comfort of understanding. He also considered the importance of timing, of allowing trust to form before actions were taken. Jack had lived long enough to know that rushing things often led to disappointment. But patience could yield something far more meaningful. And then, one late afternoon, fate intervened in the quietest way. Jack saw her struggling to carry a heavy basket of firewood across the street. Without thinking, he stepped forward. "Here, let me help you with that," he said, taking the basket from her hands. She looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face, and then she smiled faintly. "Thank you," she said, her voice lighter than it had been before. It was a simple gesture. Yet in that moment, something shifted. The invisible thread between them strengthened, becoming a small but tangible connection. As Jack helped her, they talked not about fears or regrets, but about the ordinary details of life. The weather, the work, the small routines that filled their days. And yet, even in these mundane topics, there was a growing sense of trust, a mutual recognition of kindness and humanity. Jack realized that relationships were built not in grand declarations, but in small, consistent acts of care. And for the first time in a long while, he felt hope not just for himself, but for the possibility of truly knowing someone else, of being known in return. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the town, Jack returned to the ranch, carrying not just the satisfaction of helping someone, but a quiet anticipation. He understood that the journey ahead would require patience, understanding, and empathy. But he also knew that some connections were worth the wait, worth the careful cultivation of trust and respect. And in that understanding, Jack found a sense of peace and purpose, a feeling that perhaps life had brought him to this town, to this woman, for a reason he would only discover in time. That night, as he lay in his bed, Jack thought of her softly. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing with certainty. He would pay attention, listen carefully, and let life unfold naturally. Some moments, he realized, were not meant to be seized forcefully, but observed and nurtured until they were ready to bloom. And in that quiet patience, Jack found hope, a hope that would carry him forward into the days to come, and into the next chapter of a story he was only beginning to understand. The next morning, Jack woke early, as he always did, the familiar sounds of the ranch greeting him. The roosters crowed, the wind rustled through the fields, and Dusty shifted his weight in the stable. Jack went about his morning chores, feeding the animals, checking fences, and repairing any loose boards along the barn. His mind, however, kept wandering back to the small house at the edge of town. He thought about the young woman he had seen struggling with the basket of firewood. That brief interaction had left a mark on him, a spark that he could not ignore. Jack had always believed that life on the ranch was simple and predictable. But thoughts of her reminded him that life in town was full of surprises. People carried stories, secrets, and quiet longings that were invisible from the outside. He had seen many people come and go in his life, yet he felt that he had only glimpsed a fragment of hers. Who was she beyond that soft voice he had overheard, and the faint smile she had offered when he helped her the day before? Jack realized that curiosity was no longer just a fleeting feeling. It had grown into a gentle pull, urging him to know her better, to understand her world. By late morning, Jack decided he would head into town again. This time, his approach was deliberate but calm. He didn't want to startle her, nor did he want to overstep. He rode Dusty at a slow pace, feeling the rhythm of the horse beneath him as he approached the town. The streets were quiet, with only a few people moving about, buying supplies or chatting in front of small shops. Jack's eyes scanned the familiar buildings, until they rested on the small house he had come to think of as hers. To his relief, she was there, tending to her garden. Her movements were careful, deliberate. But there was a softness to the way she touched the plants, a tenderness that Jack could see even from a distance. She seemed unaware of him, absorbed in her work, humming a quiet tune that drifted on the warm breeze. Jack smiled to himself. There was something peaceful about this moment, a pause in the constant motion of life. He wondered if she noticed the world with the same quiet appreciation he did when he rode across the plains. Jack dismounted, and approached slowly, keeping his steps measured and gentle. "Good morning," he said, tipping his hat as he drew closer. She looked up, startled at first, then relaxed when she saw the calm expression on his face. "Good morning," she replied softly, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Jack noticed the way she studied him briefly before returning to her plants, as if weighing the safety of conversation. He understood that caution came from experience, not fear, and he respected it. For a few moments, they worked in silence. Jack helping with small tasks, watering the plants, moving a few stubborn rocks, carrying a small bucket of soil. The quiet was comfortable, not awkward. Jack realized that connection didn't always require words. Sometimes, shared effort and presence spoke louder than conversation. He watched her occasionally, noticing the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the way her lips curved in a faint smile at a particularly healthy plant. And he felt an unexpected warmth. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for helping yesterday. I wasn't expecting anyone to notice." Jack shook his head. "It's no trouble. Sometimes, a little help makes the day easier. And besides, it's nice to see someone taking care of their space." She nodded thoughtfully. And for a moment, they simply shared the quiet rhythm of the garden. Jack found himself opening up in ways he rarely did. He told her small stories of life on the ranch, the challenges of mending fences during storms, the stubbornness of Dusty when he refused to follow orders, and the long nights spent under stars so bright they felt almost alive. She listened attentively, occasionally laughing at a particularly amusing incident, or expressing surprise at some hardship he had faced. Jack realized that she was not only kind but genuinely interested in understanding life from another perspective. As the hours passed, the initial tension between them softened. Jack noticed that her posture relaxed, that her movements became less guarded, and that her eyes occasionally met his with a warmth that spoke of growing trust. He understood that trust was earned slowly, through consistent, thoughtful actions, and that patience was essential. There was no rush, no urgency, only the gentle unfolding of familiarity. Around midday, Jack offered to accompany her into town to gather a few supplies. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I suppose it would be easier with another set of hands," she admitted, smiling faintly. The walk into town was easy and natural. They talked about the little things, the weather, the crops, the townspeople, and the routines of daily life. Jack realized that even the most ordinary topics could become meaningful when shared with someone who was truly listening. In the market square, Jack helped her carry items from the general store back to her home. Their conversation continued, shifting to stories of childhood, favorite places to visit, and small dreams for the future. Jack felt a growing admiration for her resilience and thoughtfulness. She seemed to carry a quiet strength, one that had been tested by life, but not broken. He was struck by how someone could face personal fears so openly, yet still navigate the world with grace and care. After returning to her home, Jack offered to help with a few more chores. She accepted, and together they moved firewood, repaired a broken gate, and cleaned the small garden area. The day passed quickly, filled with the steady rhythm of shared work and quiet conversation. Jack found that he was learning more about her in these simple moments than he might have in hours of casual talk. There was honesty in shared effort, he realized. And in that honesty, a foundation for trust began to form. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, Jack and the young woman paused to rest. They sat on the steps of her small porch, breathing in the warm evening air. Jack noticed a softness in her eyes, a subtle relaxation that told him she was beginning to feel safe in his presence. She glanced at him, and for a moment, their eyes met, sharing a silent acknowledgement of the growing bond between them. Jack reflected on the day and understood that life was built from such moments. It was not always the grand gestures or dramatic encounters that shaped relationships, but the accumulation of small acts, helping with chores, listening attentively, offering a kind word, sharing a quiet laugh. These moments, he realized, were what truly mattered, and they formed the foundation of something meaningful and lasting. As he prepared to leave, He offered a gentle farewell. "I should get back before it gets too dark. The horses need attention." She nodded, smiling. "Thank you for everything today. I enjoyed your company." Jack tipped his hat again. "The pleasure was mine. I'll see you soon." He mounted Dusty and rode back to the ranch, his heart light, yet aware of the significance of the day. That night, Jack lay in his bed, thinking about her. He realized that human connection required patience, empathy, and respect. One could not rush, trust, or force understanding. It grew slowly, nurtured by thoughtful action and genuine care. Jack felt a quiet sense of anticipation, not the restless kind that demanded immediate results, but the calm kind that promised meaningful growth over time. He understood that their story was only beginning, that the small threads they had woven together today would form the fabric of a deeper connection if nurtured carefully. Jack also thought about the lessons he had learned in life. He had faced storms, isolation, and hardship, yet he realized that some of the greatest challenges came from understanding and relating to others. People's hearts were complex, and fear and longing often lay hidden beneath a calm exterior. He understood now that to connect with someone truly required more than physical presence. It required emotional awareness, patience, and a willingness to see them for who they were, not just for what they showed to the world. As the town slept under a blanket of stars, Jack felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He realized that he had been living in routines that, while comfortable, lacked the depth that came from meaningful relationships. The young woman had reminded him that life could surprise, challenge, and inspire in ways he had forgotten. He vowed to continue being present, to offer kindness, and to nurture the trust they had begun to build. Days turned into weeks, and Jack and the young woman continued to cross paths. Each encounter, whether brief or extended, added another layer to their growing understanding of each other. They shared laughter, small stories, and moments of quiet reflection. Jack noticed the change in her posture, the ease in her smile, and the openness in her conversation. He realized that trust, once nurtured, could bloom into something remarkable, something that transformed ordinary days into meaningful experiences. Through it all, Jack maintained his quiet respect and patience. He knew that every word, every action, and every shared moment was a step toward deeper connection. He also understood that their story was unfolding naturally, at its own pace, without pressure or expectation. And in that realization, he found joy, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. By the time the next weekend arrived, Jack felt that a subtle, unspoken bond had been formed. It was not declared in grand statements or dramatic gestures, but built on small, thoughtful acts and mutual respect. And as he rode back to the ranch, after another day spent helping her with tasks around the house and garden, he knew that this bond was only the beginning of something significant, something worth cherishing and protecting. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Jack and the young woman grew stronger, quietly but surely. Each time they met, there was a natural rhythm to their interactions, a rhythm that made even the simplest tasks feel comforting and meaningful. Jack had come to know her as Emily, a name that suited her soft yet determined nature. She had a quiet strength that fascinated him, a resilience born from facing life's challenges alone, and a curiosity about the world that mirrored his own. Emily began to look forward to Jack's visits, not only because of his help with chores or errands, but because of the calm presence he brought into her life. There was no rush, no pressure, just steady companionship that allowed her to feel safe and understood. Jack, in turn, felt something he had not felt in years, a deep sense of connection, a quiet happiness that lingered long after he had left her home. Their relationship was growing, not through grand gestures or dramatic events, but through simple, consistent moments that spoke volumes about care, respect, and understanding. One bright morning, Emily invited Jack to help her paint the small fence around her garden. The sun was warm, the air filled with the scent of flowers, and the rhythm of their work created an easy companionship. They talked about small things, the colors of the sky at different times of day, the challenges of maintaining a garden, and the routines that shaped their lives. Emily laughed when Jack described a stubborn goat he had dealt with on the ranch, and Jack smiled at her fascination with the details of his life. These ordinary moments became extraordinary because they shared them together, noticing each other's quirks, strengths, and gentle humor. As the days passed, Jack learned more about Emily's life. She had grown up in the town, living quietly and learning to rely on herself. Her family had moved away years ago, leaving her with memories and a sense of independence. Jack listened without judgment, understanding that her strength had been forged in solitude. Emily, in turn, listened to Jack's stories about life on the ranch, the long days under the sun, and the nights spent alone under the endless stars. Each story they shared deepened their understanding of one another and brought them closer in ways words alone could not. One afternoon, while they were gathering firewood together, Jack noticed that Emily seemed quieter than usual. Her steps were slower, her hands hesitant as she picked up logs. Concerned, he asked softly, "Are you all right?" Emily looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of vulnerability and trust. I just worry about being alone," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I have to face everything by myself." Jack nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "You don't have to," he said gently. "You don't have to carry it all alone. I'm here, and I'll help however I can." Emily smiled faintly, a small flicker of relief in her expression, and Jack realized that trust was blossoming in ways that words could barely capture. Their days together were no longer just about chores or errands. They had become shared experiences that wove their lives together. They would walk through town, helping neighbors with small tasks, or sit on Emily's porch in the evenings, watching the sun set, and talking about dreams for the future. Jack noticed how Emily's laughter grew freer, how her movements became more relaxed, and how she seemed to carry a quiet confidence that had been hidden before. He understood that their bond was giving her strength, just as it gave him a sense of purpose he had not realized he was missing. One particular evening, Jack and Emily sat on the porch, the sky painted with shades of pink and orange. Emily looked thoughtful, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Jack," she said softly, "I've never had anyone really care like this before. I mean, like you do." Jack felt a warmth spread through him. He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Emily, I respect you. I admire your strength, and I want to be here for you, not to take over, but to share the journey." Emily nodded, her eyes glistening slightly. And for a long moment, they sat in silence, letting the quiet speak for them. Over time, Jack also realized that patience and understanding were as important as action. He never rushed Emily, never pressured her, and always allowed her to set the pace of their interactions. He knew that real connection came from mutual respect and genuine care. Emily, in turn, began to open up more about her dreams and fears. She spoke of places she wished to see, of books that had inspired her, and of small hopes she had long kept to herself. Jack listened, offering encouragement and understanding, never judgment or unsolicited advice. One weekend, they decided to visit a small fair in town together. The town square was bustling with activity, children laughing, music playing, and the smell of fresh-baked treats in the air. Jack and Emily walked side by side, enjoying the simple pleasures of the fair, watching a juggling performance, tasting honey from a local vendor, and marveling at handcrafted goods. Jack noticed the way Emily's eyes lit up with genuine curiosity and joy, and he felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond the physical act of helping her with tasks. He realized that happiness was contagious, and sharing moments of pure enjoyment could strengthen bonds just as much as acts of kindness. During the fair, they took a quiet walk along the edge of town, away from the crowds. Emily paused to pick up a small wildflower, examining its delicate petals. "It's beautiful," she said softly, handing it to Jack. He accepted it with a smile, feeling the simplicity of the gesture resonate deeply. "It is," he agreed. "Just like small moments like this, quiet, unnoticed, yet full of meaning." Emily nodded, and for a moment, they shared a silent understanding that life's most profound experiences often came in ordinary moments of attention and care. Over the next several days, Jack noticed that Emily seemed more confident and at ease. She moved with a lightness that had not been there before, laughed more freely, and even began sharing small jokes with him. Jack realized that their connection was growing stronger because it was built on trust, patience, and mutual respect. He also understood that the bond they were forming was not merely about companionship, it was about recognizing the value of each other's presence and supporting one another in meaningful ways. One late afternoon, while they were repairing a section of her garden fence, Emily paused and looked at Jack. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "I used to be afraid of being alone, of never finding someone who understood me. But now, I feel like maybe I don't have to face life entirely by myself." Jack nodded, his heart swelling with quiet pride. "You never have to," he replied. "We all need someone to share the journey with, someone to offer support and care. I'm glad we've found that in each other." Emily smiled, and for the first time, Jack saw a sense of peace in her eyes, a reassurance that the connection they were building was genuine and meaningful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm hues, Jack and Emily sat quietly, their hands brushing occasionally as they worked on the final touches of the fence. There was no rush, no urgency, only the steady rhythm of shared effort and quiet companionship. Jack realized that these moments, simple as they were, had become the most significant part of his days. The bond they had nurtured over weeks of patience, understanding, and mutual respect was now strong enough to carry them through challenges, uncertainties, and the ordinary trials of daily life. Jack also reflected on how much he had learned through this process. He had come to understand that true connection required listening, patience, and empathy. It was about showing up consistently, respecting boundaries, and valuing small gestures as much as grand actions. Emily had taught him that trust was fragile but powerful, and that nurturing it with care could transform lives. He felt a sense of gratitude, not only for her presence in his life, but for the lessons she had shared simply by being herself. That night, as Jack lay in bed in his cabin, he thought about the future. He did not know exactly what it would hold, nor did he need to. He understood that the bond he and Emily shared was growing naturally, at its own pace, guided by trust, patience, and genuine care. And in that understanding, Jack found a sense of contentment. Life was unpredictable, full of surprises, but when shared with someone who valued and respected you, it became richer, deeper, and far more meaningful than he had ever imagined. The following weeks passed in a steady rhythm, each day adding another thread to the growing connection between Jack and Emily. Their bond, nurtured through shared work, laughter, and quiet moments, had become stronger and more resilient. Jack often reflected on how much Emily had brought into his life: the warmth of her presence, the depth of her understanding, and the sense of calm that came from knowing someone truly valued his company. Emily, too, began to see the world differently, finding comfort in the knowledge that she no longer had to face life alone. One bright morning, Jack rode into town with Dusty, carrying a few supplies he had gathered for Emily. The town streets were alive with people preparing for the upcoming harvest festival, a tradition that brought the community together with music, food, and laughter. Jack noticed Emily working in her garden, the morning sun catching her hair, and he felt a familiar warmth spread through him. She looked up, smiled, and waved, a gesture that made the simple act of arriving feel meaningful. "Good morning, Jack," Emily greeted as he approached, her voice carrying a lightness that reflected the peace she had found in recent weeks. "I thought we might get a head start on preparing for the festival." Jack nodded, smiling. "That sounds like a good plan. Let's get started." Together, they worked efficiently yet leisurely, carrying baskets of vegetables, decorating the small garden with flowers, and preparing a few handmade crafts for the festival. Each task, though ordinary, was made enjoyable by their shared presence and the easy rhythm of their companionship. As the day progressed, Jack noticed how Emily's confidence had grown. She moved with grace and certainty, her laughter coming more freely, and her eyes sparkled with a quiet joy. Jack realized that the bond they had nurtured over weeks of careful patience and understanding had given her strength. She no longer carried the weight of fear and loneliness alone. She had found someone who respected her, valued her, and walked beside her through life's challenges. Jack felt proud, not in a boastful way, but in the simple, deep satisfaction of seeing someone grow through trust and care. By midday, they paused to rest, sitting on the edge of Emily's small porch with a cool drink in hand. The sky was clear, and the warmth of the sun seemed to mirror the calm contentment they felt. Emily turned to Jack, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said softly, "I used to be afraid that life would pass me by, that I'd be stuck alone with only my own fears for company. But now, I feel hopeful." Jack smiled gently. "Hope is a powerful thing," he replied, "and it grows even stronger when it's shared. You've given me that hope too, Emily. More than you might realize." Their conversation shifted naturally to plans for the festival. Jack and Emily decided to take a small cart filled with flowers, baked goods, and handmade crafts to the town square. The walk was filled with laughter and light teasing, their connection deepening with every shared moment. Emily occasionally glanced at Jack with a shy warmth in her eyes, and Jack noticed the subtle ways she had come to trust him fully. It was a trust built not on grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but on weeks of consistent care, attention, and patience. When they arrived at the festival, the town square was alive with colors, sounds, and movement. Children ran between stalls, musicians played cheerful tunes, and the smell of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filled the air. Jack and Emily set up their small display, arranging items carefully and chatting with neighbors who stopped to admire their work. The day was filled with simple joys, watching children play, tasting treats, and sharing small stories with townspeople. Through it all, Jack and Emily remained side by side, their bond evident in quiet glances, shared laughter, and the ease of companionship. As evening approached, the festival lights were lit, casting a warm glow over the square. Jack and Emily wandered to a quiet corner, away from the crowds, and sat on a low wooden fence. The air was filled with the sound of music and distant laughter. But in their little corner, there was only the gentle hum of connection. Emily turned to Jack, her expression serious, yet calm. "Jack," she said, "I feel safe with you. I feel like I can be myself, without fear or pretense. That means more to me than I can say." Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "And I feel the same, Emily. Being with you has shown me what it means to truly care for someone, to share life in a way that's honest, patient, and meaningful." The evening grew quieter, and the festival lights reflected in Emily's eyes. Jack noticed the way her hand rested gently near his, and he realized that their bond had grown beyond friendship into something deeper, something tender and genuine. He had come to care for her in a way that went beyond mere companionship, and he sensed that she felt the same. Yet neither rushed the moment, understanding that the foundation they had built was far more valuable than any hurried declaration. Over the next several days, Jack and Emily continued to share life's small moments. They repaired fences, tended the garden, and helped neighbors with chores, all while deepening their emotional connection. Each act, each conversation, each shared laugh reinforced the trust and understanding between them. Jack noticed how Emily's presence made the ordinary extraordinary, and he realized that the quiet consistency of care and attention was the true essence of their relationship. One afternoon, as they walked along the outskirts of town, Emily spoke about her dreams for the future. "I want to see new places, meet new people, and experience life fully," she said, her eyes bright with determination. "But I also want to do it with someone who respects me, understands me, and walks beside me, not ahead or behind." Jack nodded, feeling a deep resonance with her words. "Then we can face those things together," he said gently, "step by step, at our own pace, with trust and understanding guiding us." As the weeks passed, Jack and Emily's bond became a source of strength for both of them. Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose and joy, inspired by Emily's trust, resilience, and kindness. Emily felt a newfound confidence, comforted by Jack's steady presence and genuine care. Their relationship was no longer simply about companionship. It had grown into a partnership grounded in respect, patience, and love. One evening, as the sun set behind the rolling hills, Jack and Emily sat together on the porch of her home, watching the sky transform into shades of pink and gold. Emily leaned slightly closer, her hand brushing against Jack's. "I used to worry that life would pass me by," she said softly. "But now, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Jack smiled, his heart full. "And I feel the same," he replied. "Life has a way of surprising us, guiding us toward what truly matters. And you, Emily, have shown me that some of the most meaningful moments come from trust, patience, and shared care." In the quiet of that evening, they sat together, hands occasionally touching, sharing a sense of peace and fulfillment that neither had experienced before. They did not need words to express the depth of their connection. It was evident in their actions, their attention to each other, and the gentle rhythm of their shared life. Jack realized that this was what he had been searching for all along. Not excitement or adventure, but steady, meaningful companionship, built on trust and understanding. Over time, Jack and Emily continued to grow together, supporting one another through the challenges and joys of daily life. They celebrated small victories, comforted each other in moments of doubt, and shared countless ordinary yet extraordinary moments that strengthened their bond. Their connection was not built on dramatic events or fleeting passion, but on the quiet consistency of care, patience, and mutual respect. One bright morning, as Jack prepared to leave for the ranch, Emily handed him a small bundle of wildflowers she had picked from her garden. "For you," she said softly, a reminder that even simple things can carry meaning. Jack accepted them with a smile, feeling the symbolic weight of the gesture. "Thank you, Emily. I'll treasure them, just like I treasure the time we share." Jack rode back to the ranch, carrying not only the flowers but a profound sense of fulfillment. He understood that life's most meaningful experiences were often found in quiet, patient moments, in gestures of care, and in the steady presence of someone who truly understands you. Emily had become a source of joy, strength, and hope, and Jack knew that their journey together was only just beginning. As the days turned into months, Jack and Emily continued to nurture their bond. They faced challenges together, celebrated successes, and shared countless quiet moments that reinforced the trust and love they had built. Their story was one of patience, respect, and genuine care, a story that showed how meaningful connections could grow naturally when nurtured with attention, empathy, and kindness. And so, Jack and Emily stepped into the future together, not hurriedly or recklessly, but with a deep understanding of the value of trust, the power of shared experiences, and the quiet beauty of a life built together. Their connection, born from a simple moment of honesty and nurtured through weeks of patience and care, had become a source of strength, joy, and hope for both of them. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, guided by the bond they had cultivated with love, respect, and unwavering understanding.